they come.
Forever Winter is now in early access, with the game receiving a huge mix of reviews, particularly some relating to the game's controversial water mechanic, with comments ranging from this to this. So throughout this video, I'm going to break down these mechanics, my experience with around 20 hours in the game so far, and try to help figure out if jumping into Forever Winter's early access right now is for you.
Did you just close the door on me?
Forever Winter is a grimdark PvE third-person extraction shooter where you are not the hero. The game is beautifully dark and designed to be difficult, brutal and punishing, with a unique but controversial resource mechanic that currently sets it apart, for better or worse, from other extraction shooters, which is the elephant in the room that we'll cover now. The game's water mechanic currently requires you to collect water during raids or by completing quests in order to prevent loss of progress in the form of the infrastructure you've built up back at the innards, aka your home base, along with any weapons and equipment you've collected in your stash. The good news is, your character progress and experience remains untouched. Water is essentially what you use to survive and tech up throughout your playthrough, unlocking different weapon vendors, upgrades for your base, and ultimately more time. The assets you unlock during your playtime, such as crafting terminals and item vendors, require a certain amount of water to unlock and keep, but if your water happens to reach 0, you lose access to those features for good until you can build your water supply back up again, either by collecting water in raids and or completing more quests. 1 barrel of water equals 24 hours, and its usage ticks down in real time, even if you're not playing. You can easily collect water in raids or by completing quests, but the feature has been described by some as an abuse of FOMO to keep people playing. The game's developers Fundog have stuck by it until now and have announced that they're listening to the feedback, and in my opinion will likely change it throughout the course of early access. There are many ways they could make a better resource gathering system, which I may dedicate a whole other video to instead of covering those here, but the simplest solution for now would be to simply change the water so that it ticks down during actual playtime and not while you're offline. That being said, the water mechanic is perfectly manageable as it is, but the idea behind offline attrition seems to be rubbing people the wrong way, and I can see where they're coming from. If the devs are open to changing it, which it seems they are, it'll be difficult for them to find some sort of balance here without trivializing the whole thing entirely and making mechanic pointless. There's a lot more to Forever Winter beyond its water mechanic though, so let's go deeper and discuss what I feel is the good and bad about the current state of the game. One of Forever Winter's strongest selling points is obviously the game's atmosphere, and while a unique art style, deliciously industrial music and grimdark feel is a great start, games, especially early access titles, don't survive on their vibe alone. So aside from the anxiety-inducing impending doom of water drought, which is likely to go away, what's there to keep you coming back to the game right now? The game's challenging nature is a good incentive alone when it comes to exploring its 5 current maps and 3 enemy AI factions, while you aim to complete a large variety of quests offered to you as you gain reputation and rewards for beating them. Scavengers are the standard neutral faction who you begin building rep for. The more missions you complete for them, the higher your standing, which means better deals with scav vendors and progressively better quests and quest rewards. As you complete more quests, you'll be offered access to the military factions locked in eternal war above ground: Eruska, Eurasia, and Europa, all offering similar perks as well as opportunities to enter raids from new faction-controlled locations. It's been noted that killing faction units in a raid will lower your rating with them, although it isn't made very clear how much this affects you inside or outside of a raid. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Each weapon you use and deal damage with during a raid earns you experience and levels with that weapon. The higher the weapon level becomes, the more parts for that weapon that become available to you across the different vendors. So you're kind of encouraged to specialize in certain weapon types, which can become particularly useful if you're playing in a team and need to fill a certain role. Your characters also gain experience points based on your actions throughout a raid. Completing quests, collecting loot, or accomplishing tasks like reviving your teammates generate experience points. But if you die during the raid or fail to extract, you'll lose everything you've accrued, including experience points and all the items you picked up. With that being said, some of those items can be retrieved if you immediately revisit the raid and find where you died, which for a game that calls itself brutal is a pretty forgiving mechanic. As you gain experience points with a character, you'll quickly begin reaching your experience points cap for the first level. When you do, you can choose to spend those points by either increasing the stats on existing traits or learning new ones within your level. Alternatively, you can spend those experience points to unlock your next prestige rank, and with it, a higher experience points cap and access to the better abilities along the chain. Every time you level up your prestige rank, you'll also gain some extra hit points, but in turn, you'll lose any skills you learned during your previous rank, and these will need to be learned all over again. But is all this enough for players to look past the game's current faults? One thing that needs to be made clear is this game isn't trying to be Tarkov when it comes to the gunplay, but in its current state, the gunplay does feel pretty basic. The first-person ADSing and muzzle flash, for example, almost look placeholder, while weapon feedback and recoil could use some tweaking across the board for a more satisfying and immersive experience when shooting. That being said, Forever Winter is primarily a third-person game, so I can see how it might be difficult to flesh out both perspectives. In third person, currently pressing Alt will bring you in closer over the shoulder, and your ADS now becomes a slightly zoomed-in third-person crosshair. I'd personally like to see a completely separate keybind for over-the-shoulder switching and aiming, with a tighter crosshair relative to the accuracy stats, sway and recoil of your weapon and character, and less of the claustrophobic zoom. I'd also like to see the ability to use my head to free look, so I'm not forced to move my entire body whenever I want to assess my surroundings or when I'm sprinting across an open plane. There's also this odd feeling when aiming your weapon, which I can only describe as a sort of input lag, like you're moving your weapon through pockets of thick atmosphere. This is either a performance-related issue or some sort of intentional gunplay debuff, like sway in Tarkov, based on your character's stats or weapon mods that you may be able to improve with time and attachments. Overall, the gunplay gets the job done and generally sounds good, but it doesn't feel completely satisfying or immersive enough yet. In my opinion, it could be a lot better. I think this will have a long way to go throughout the game's early access period in order to flesh it out. My opinion may change when I get a chance to use a greater variety of weapons later in the game, but this is an early access review, and with around 15 to 20 hours in the game, these are the sort of things you can expect if you decide to pick it up right now. Weapon customization, however, looks pretty promising for its initial implementation. There's a lot of different ammo types and attachment options, and you'll come across a large variety of weapon components in every raid. Attachments alter stats such as accuracy, damage, and recoil, with a variety of different weapon parts to choose from in order to tweak a weapon more to your liking. I can see this part of the game providing a lot of replayability for players looking to min-max their gear in order to efficiently tackle raids and enemy AI, whether solo or as part of a team composition. Depending on your character, you'll also be able to customize your rig that you take with you into raids. This is the giant caged backpack you carry, which dictates how many special items, loot, and weapons you can carry in any given game, which is another unique feature to Forever Winter that I do like. GT, they've climbed up on... What the fuck, are they spawning in? Or did they climb up? Okay, that looks jank. Unfortunately though, for a game that relies purely on its PvE, the game's AI is currently lacking. The AI will often screw itself over by getting stuck on terrain during cool and immersive moments, or suddenly make random movements with a lack of coherent direction or purpose. This can often be a little deflating when you're in an intense standoff or butt-clenching situation, only to realize this super scary machine of death is stuck on a rock or is running around the map like a headless chicken. There's also a complete lack of weight to these giant machines, which will sometimes instantly rise up and fall down small bits of terrain while traversing the game environments. Somehow they seem heavy, yet weightless at the same time. For an immersive game that really sucks you in with its atmosphere, these sort of things can really suck you right out again. Across all the different types of AI you'll encounter, there's a real lack of weapon variety. Most AI threats will either melee you or fire the same ballistic autocannon with varying degrees of damage, range, and explosive radius, offering little in terms of interesting and challenging combat dynamics beyond their speed and hit points. In a game with no PvP, the AI needs to be able to use a variety of tactics, weapon types, and behaviors to provide interesting, long-term engaging combat and challenges, and I especially hope we'll start seeing boss-level encounters with special traits later on in the game. And while the game is challenging in its current state, most of that challenge comes from the sheer volume of enemy AI patrols and the lethality of their weapons when you do finally trigger their narrow but difficult to gauge detection range. In order to survive, you'll find yourself constantly moving through the environments using a combination of sneaking and butt-clenching sprints as you move from cover to cover. But due to the AI's inconsistent ability to detect you, these stealthy moments can sometimes be overcome with less effort than you'd expect, leading to an underwhelming sense of accomplishment when overcoming tricky situations. When it comes to being stealthy in Forever Winter, there doesn't seem to be any proactive options besides hiding behind things or using a suppressor. It's hard to tell if stealthiness has any relation to where you hide either, such as darkened corners or pieces of debris that leave your character poking over the top. There's also no ability to prone or make yourself less conspicuous at all, besides crouching and running around a corner or relocating entirely. Perhaps the intention here is just to fight your way out of those tricky moments, but some more options and clarity of stealth mechanics would go a long way into offering more variety in the way you approach the game. AI spawns can also be frustrating, with entire patrols sometimes instantly spawning on top of you. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it can destroy your entire raid and break immersion. I believe all AI should be reinforcing from an off-map entry point or via dropships and vehicles in a way that makes more sense to the game and world. The game is also in need of optimization, with some hefty minimum requirements that have some people's low to mid-range rigs struggling. I found the performance has been good enough on my mid-range machine, but it could definitely run smoother and faster in some of the more demanding maps and situations. There have also been some technical problems that have straight up prevented people from playing with each other since the early access release, but Fundog has assured us they're working on a network fix as we speak that may already be deployed by the time this video goes out to get people back in lobbies again. So should you get into Forever Winter's early access, hopefully by now you have a clearer idea of what to expect, i.e. a solid but far from complete game that needs your help to make it better. In the end, Forever Winter is a promising and original game with a small and passionate indie team behind it who seem determined to make it the best game it can be. There's a lot more I'd like to say in terms of a wish list of features, but I'll probably save that for another video. The devs are incredibly open to feedback and have already shown a great amount of honesty and candidness with their community, which has already brought them a lot of goodwill that will help throughout the game's early access period. I'd say Forever Winter could probably do with a good year and a half of early access before it reaches some sort of 1.0 state, and if Fundog Studios plays their cards right, they'll be able to hold on to a loyal and engaged fan base throughout that time and ultimately deliver a successful, well-rounded title when it's ready to fully release. I'll continue to cover the game as it develops, so if you got something out of the video and you'd like to see more, please do like it and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing what Fundog can do with the game over the next year or so. As always, thanks for all the support, and thanks for watching, my fellow meatbags. Goodbye.